Pick it off my face.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning. We're ready to begin here. We're going to be in Judges chapter 3 in just a moment. Nice to see the sun break out this morning, driving to church. We have a beautiful day here. We got a lot of folks gone. Hope they'll be okay. And, we'll tell you more later about what's going on in our life, but we're concerned now about Judges and what is happening here with the people of Israel in this, beginning this first cycle of rebellion. So we're just going to wait a couple more minutes. Like we got more folks coming, so. Hey, Bob, could you close that door, please? Thank you. Thank you. Okay, all right, let's bow and have a word of prayer. Let's start. Our holy God, how great, wonderful, holy is your name. You're the only true and living God, the giver of life, sustainer of life, and the judge of every soul. For that we are grateful that you alone will be our Savior and Judge. We appeal to you and thank you for all that you have done for us. Our Father, we pray that you will bless us this morning now as we open your word and we read and study from your word. Pray that we may glean from it those things which will help us have a better understanding of who you are, a stronger faith within you, and a greater focus and clarity of hope for the rest you have prepared for us. Please be with us and help us as we try to serve you in the best way that we can. Forgive us when we fail you. Strengthen us and encourage us in those things that will bring you honor and glory. Be with our families, be with our children, be with those who are struggling and who are facing difficult times right now. Pray that you will lift their spirit, strengthen their faith, and give us the hope that will lead us to you. In Christ we pray. Amen. All right, we're in the third chapter of Judges, as we had noted here. Last week in class, we were just finishing up in the first 6 verses of chapter 3, which is really the end of the prologue. The prologue was, if you'll check your syllabus, it was just simply those chapters that were preparing the reader for what is about to happen. Here in verse 7, we're going to start the main body of the letter, which is the rebellious cycles, where Israel begins to go into this repetitive cycle of rebellion. And Othniel is the first judge. We had given a map out here earlier. Let's see if we lost our program. James, have we got the Judges 3 program that I sent?
Yeah.
I guess it's not. Am I not doing it right?
Operator error.
Good.
Yeah. I see the red lights. I think it's on. Okay.
Maybe just put it way up here.
The operator is not in error. He's just in the dark.
Hasn't been confirmed yet.
Thank you very much. Okay. No problem. Yes, there we go. And the map that we had given out about the areas in which the judges had been judging, we start here with Othniel down at the very bottom here. And in this region right here where he's going to be fighting against a king that's going to come all the way back over here from Mesopotamia. And this is what is so interesting about this. Othniel, we learned from the first chapter, he is the nephew and son-in-law of Caleb. When we first opened the book of Judges, we saw where Caleb is calling for someone to come and take the kingdom of Bezek, the city, and he said, whoever will do that, I'll give him my daughter for his wife. Now, the 21st century sensibility that you and I have, we look at that and we go, you know, how chauvinistic, how misogynist, how terrible. No, Caleb, first of all, he is a righteous man. Secondly, he's a very smart, intuitive guy because he recognizes that whoever the man is that takes this city, he's going to be a nobleman, a mighty man, a warrior. And boy, did he think right. Because the man, Othniel, who goes and takes the city, that Caleb gives his daughter to, Othniel will become the first judge. Arguably, one of the greatest judges. You don't read anything negative about him. And that he is going to go against, which is also arguably the greatest oppressor of the Israelites during this period of time. This king, Cushan-Rishathaim, is likely a title. Doubly wicked Cushite is what scholars think that this term means. He is from Mesopotamia, and if you remember from your world history classes in junior high or high school, Mesopotamia was this region of land between the Tigris and the Euphrates. Do you remember what, in the ancient world history, what this was called, this area? I'm just curious if you had the...
It was called the Fertile Crescent. Fertile Crescent.
No? Yeah, that's true. That's true. All the way down Egypt, it was the Fertile Crescent. But Mesopotamia in particular. Interesting. Whatever.
Well, the Garden of Eden was somewhere between
Right.
those rivers.
I'm going to give you a hint. Cradle between Tigris and Euphrates, it was called the cradle of civilization. This is where it started. As Donna said, the Garden of Eden there. This is the region that was the most fertile because of those two cities. And civilizations began there. This is where Abraham was from Ur. Now, the reason we point this out is that, we come back to this slide, whoever this man, Cushan-Rishathaim, whatever king he was the most powerful in that day and age in the ancient time. And his power, his control, reached down into the area where the Israelites now will come in to the promised land, into Canaan. And this is how we begin this first cycle in verse 7. One last point to make. In verse 6, they've already adopted the Canaanite people, their customs, their culture, their children, and it has already infected them. We saw that back in the very beginning with Judah when they cut off the thumbs and the big toes of King Adonai-Bezek. They're in this now waist deep. And verse 7 of chapter 3, the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord. They forgot the Lord their God and served the Baals and Asherah. Let me ask you a question. Did they forget, like it just slipped their mind, and then serve the Baals there in verse 7? Or maybe there's something more to that. How do you forget that? You don't forget. Donna?
Failed to acknowledge. They just said, I'm going to pretend he's not there.
Right. They fail to acknowledge, let's put it this way, is that when you ignore something long enough, you forget it in the respect that you don't think about it. You know about it back there in the recesses of your mind. You've had an experience with it. You couldn't forget that. But for the moment, you have dismissed it long enough that it doesn't register in your mind or in your thinking. We do this all the time. Somebody will remind you, oh, you remember Uncle Cyrus? Oh, yeah, I forgot about him. When we say that, I forgot about Uncle Cy. What that means is we haven't thought about him in a long time, and our attention has been directed otherwise. You remember Jehovah? Oh, yeah, I remember this God named Jehovah, but it hasn't been in our life, in our thinking, in our daily practice. So what they have done is they followed after the Baals. Now, I'm going to ask you another question in connection with this. How could Jehovah, who brought them out of Egypt, they knew all the stories, now has brought them into the promised land, how could he not figure into their thinking against the stone gods and the wooden gods of Baal and Asherah? You've got the mighty God of Jehovah, of heaven and earth. And then you have these stone gods. How is it that they forget the Creator and they focus on the stone and wood? How do they do that? Good?
Their parents just wouldn't teach it, is the problem. So
Well-
the next generation came along and they see what gods are around them, but they're not being taught properly.
That's certainly a part of it. Their parents didn't teach them. That's right. What else would couple with that?
You
Ty?
can see them, touch them. They're visible in their eyes. They have sight on them. Where God has performed these miracles, but they haven't really, he's not something they can hold on to or grasp. He's not tangible.
Right.
Whereas these other ones, they can touch them, they can set up altars to them, thrones, make them look cute and pretty, whereas they can't necessarily do that with Jehovah God.
Okay, I think everyone heard that. Those gods are tangible. They can see them and they can touch them. Bill?
I don't think it would happen just much like today. You've got a whole group of people ignoring God, and the people that originally believed in Him don't see anything changing. They don't see the real God. You can see today where people say, oh, I don't believe in the Bible, nothing's happened, there's such a thing as miracles, I don't believe what people wrote back then. I can see the same thing happening there.
Well, that could be part of it too. That's right. What else would be immediate, right in front of their face? John?
I think part of it also is who you associate with. If you're married to someone or all your friends are, it's real hard, and that's something a lot of us struggle with is if you keep friends, a lot of friends, most of your friends are away from church, and they're all going and doing something fun on Sunday morning, sometimes it's hard to say, no, I'll be at church, and you know I'll be at church. So we start doing what they do, and then, like you said, you kind of start ignoring.
Right.
And it doesn't happen overnight. It's a pattern in your life where you stop coming to church on Wednesdays. And then you start missing 1 or 2 Sundays a month. Then you come once a month. Then the next thing you know, you don't even bother.
Yeah, this strikes to the point that we're getting at here is that they are surrounded by it. They're waist deep in it. It's everywhere. All of their friends. Now, as we learn from verse 6, their families are involved in it. It's all around them, and the influence just grows day by day by day, and it's just starting to smother their faith in Jehovah. And that is being relinquished and set aside, and now they're just taken in by all of this because, as John used the word, it's fun. It's attractive. It's good. No one would worship Baal if it wasn't fun. You say, well, they were told to offer their children. That's right, they did, so that they could have more fun. Now, that's a hard concept to get, but that was behind that. We want more blessings, so we'll give him my child. James?
I think just like John was saying, they've been wandering as a people, right, as a big group. And now they've gone into the land and they're starting to spread out. They're starting to settle. They're no longer, on the move every day, week, month, however often God wanted them to move. Now they're settled. They're staying in one place. And all these influences are still there because they haven't done the hard work to root them all out and defeat all the other nations. They're there, a constant influence around them. Instead of being a separate people, they're now living among all the people.
That's right. They're broken up and now spread out with all of the Canaanite people. Barry?
Another way to look at forgetting God, or at least the way I've looked at it, is it's a dilution. When you dilute something, it becomes weaker. And so all these people around them have multiple gods, and they only have one. And now they have the opportunity to have multiple gods like all of the people around them. Well, that dilutes their faith in God. It weakens it. And we're the same way. We can dilute our faith in God with kids' sports or work or whatever. When we dilute it, we weaken it. And that's what's happened to them. They've lost the focus on God, and it's diluted between all these other gods.
Right. Ethan?
I don't know why, but when you first asked the question, immediately I was thinking that they probably spent money on this stone or this piece of wood, and now they're vested in it. They don't want to feel like, I spent money on nothing. I need to give some credit to this possession, this tangible thing. I don't know if there's any meat to that, but that was initially what I thought is how easily people can start to get consumed with possessions.
Dan?
I sum it up in one word: leaven.
11. Yeah, a little leaven. Leaven with the whole lump. Yeah, there was certainly a lot of leaven in Canaan. And they were supposed to take it out. But the leaven stayed and permeated. That's right. Good observation. All right. Okay. So Othniel here now is going to come to the stage because the people forgot the Lord their God, served the Baals. Verse 8, therefore the anger of the Lord was hot against Israel, and he sold them into the land of Cushan-Rishathaim, king of Mesopotamia. The children of Israel served Cushan-Rishathaim 8 years. Who this man was, where he came from, we know he's from Mesopotamia. How did he have such power and control? No one knows, but I would just point out this one thing. This is the first cycle coming into the promised land. There is a long history of kings and idolatry in this land before Israel got there. So when they first get there, they may get hit with the biggest, strongest, most powerful influence of paganism in this land, even extending over into Mesopotamia. So verse 29, when the children of Israel cried out to the Lord raised up a deliverer for the children of Israel who delivered them. Here's the judge. That word is a savior, deliverer. He comes to judge them and he delivers them. He is Othniel, the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother. The Spirit of the Lord came upon him and he judged Israel. He went out to war and the Lord delivered Cushan-Rishathaim, king of Mesopotamia, into his hand. And his hand prevailed over Cushan-Rishathaim. So the land had rest for 40 years. Then Othniel, the son of Kenaz, died. Now, 2 or 3 things about this. One that we're going to read over and over in the book of Judges is that when this judge or deliverer rises to the occasion, we will read the expression, the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. God is going to be directing these judges. And I will say it for the next few months through the class and then at the end of the class. At the beginning, I made the comment, this is not a book of heroes. Now, I'm not trying to discount all of the Bible school lessons that are given in Sunday school. My wife, as well as every other young mother, etc., taught these stories to all the children about Gideon and Samson, etc., etc. What you'll notice, and rightfully so, in many of the children's story is that it's heavily edited to keep all of the more crude, vulgar things out of the story, so that it is a black hat, white hat story. By that, I mean, you know, the old Western, the bad guy wore the black hat, the good guy wore the white hat. That's that syndrome here. But when we get into this is an ugly book, and we're going to read some ugly episodes of these people. They are not heroes. The heroes of this book is God. God will be the hero in every one of these stories. He's the one who will put his spirit into this judge, and the judge will deliver them out. But they're all flawed. They're all people who are just brought to that moment in their life to do the will of the Lord, and it's the Spirit of the Lord that will move them. Othniel, as we said a moment ago, there's nothing bad that's ever said about Othniel. I think he was a great guy. But Othniel was just simply one who was used by God. Now, let's fast forward that into the New Testament. Who's the hero of the New Testament? It's not the apostles. It's Jesus, the Son of God. He's the hero. He is the one who makes everything happen. He made it happen in the creation. He made it happen in the new church, his church. So the hero is God. The men are just simply men who are flawed, who have issues, and but God uses them. Now, I'm going to tell you why I just said that, for future reference. We don't want to make the mistake of elevating these men and women to a level that they do not deserve. Wonderful work that they did. Great courage. Great insight. Great faith. Great all of these things in their lives, but every one of them were flawed. They all had issues. They all had problems. But they rose to their highest. Well, I'm going to preach here now. I got to wave it because here. They rose to their highest point in their life and their most important, their most effective, and their most godly moment in their life when they put God in their life. When they did God's will, they were heroes. But it didn't last because we know how life is. You can't stay on this high of success. We do, and then we go back in and we've got to fight and work, and then we may work ourselves up to another great success, and that's wonderful, but then we have to repeat that over and over because life is just this. We know that. And so we don't want to make the mistake of putting these people on a pedestal where they don't belong. We put the Lord on the pedestal. End of sermon. Okay, any question or comment about that? Barry?
I find it interesting in the book of Judges, just a question about it over the years, why he chose to tell some stories and didn't. I mean, we just went through 48 years and 4 verses.
Right.
And it's just, boom, and that's gone. And it's not a linear book because he expands on Gideon and Samson and all those, big stories, as we would call them.
Yeah.
And here, Othniel, right at the beginning, he did a good job, and yep, they went out to war, conquered them, reigned for 40 years. Yep, that's it. Don't know why.
I'm going to take that comment as an occasion to make another observation here that I think is important. And I don't want anyone to think I'm trying to be sacrilegious or I'm trying to play fast and loose when you try to think for God. But I think this becomes obvious by the end of this book and certainly through the Bible. Why do you suppose it is that God would spend time? Let me rephrase this. Why would the Holy Spirit reveal to us in more length the stories of the people and the congregations that were flawed?
rather than those who have their act together. Othniel clearly has his act together. And as Barry said, we covered 48 years in 4 verses. But there's going to be extensive discussion about Gideon and surely about Samson, who is clearly flawed. And then you get to the New Testament. The congregation that is the most written about is one of the worst, Corinth. Now, why do you suppose the Holy Spirit would choose to reveal to us the specific details of dysfunctional people and dysfunctional congregations? Why do you suppose we would have that? Now, we're not trying to think for God. I think the answer is pretty obvious. But why would he do that? Okay, yeah, Mike?
To teach.
To teach? Yes. To teach what, Daniel?
Say to reveal the beautiful character of God.
Yes, it will reveal the mercy of God. Yes, Greg?
I think it's one of those things that we don't lift people up, number one, but number two is we can relate. We can
Right. That's exactly right. This is who we are. When I first started the study here, and I'll get you in just a second, right? When I first started the program here, I was to look at all these different churches in the New Testament. And I started reading the background, the history of them, geopolitically, geographically, socially, politically, all these things. And I'll tell you what I was first struck with when I started studying Corinth. All I could think of was San Diego. Seriously, that was one of my first observations, is that so much of Corinth was like San Diego and its history. And then the ideas that were coming into the bay on these ships, as it did there. And fortunately, I had the opportunity to go there twice to Corinth, and it just confirmed my suspicion. It's just like San Diego without the freeways and the homeless. It's very much like that. And that's what we need to read about. So we go to Corinth, and it shows us, number one, the mistake they made. Number two, why they made it. And number three, the correction for that mistake. So as Mike said, to learn. That's right. We read that. I don't learn anything from a perfect congregation. We may get, yeah, that's nice. Other than the fact that, well, we'll never be that. Or I won't be like this person. But the flawed person. That's why Peter's one of the most beloved apostles. Because he's got all of his flaws. Bless his heart. He's just like us. Rodney?
I said it all.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I was going to say, piggyback off of Greg, and we go through those ebb and flows. We do the same thing. We are those people. We look by example, and yes, we have our ups and our downs, but we do the same thing. Right. So we are that church, and there's parts of us that sometimes we fail, or I shouldn't say that, that's the wrong word, reverse that. All of us fail, and we have to uplift Jesus and God, not the men of this Bible. They're just tools, just like all of us.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So the hero of the book we're going to see is God. I'm going to throw one more question to you that I don't want you to answer today, that we'll answer when we finish this course. Why did God put up with all of this? There's a reason. Just kind of file that in the back of your mind and wonder, why did he do this? Because he's already told them, I'm just going to let you, let him take you over. But he still is going to test them more and more. So they have rest for 40 years. That's wonderful. Verse 11, Othniel, the son of Kenaz, died. Pretty successful life. But now life goes on. Verse 12, and the children of Israel again did evil in the sight of the Lord. Question I have is, these last 40 years under Othniel, what did they look like? I would say it was obviously peaceful. It would be profitable. And there would be people that were contented. Their spirits were at peace. They weren't being oppressed. They weren't being agitated. They weren't being tempted or provoked by pagan gods. They were worshiping the Lord. They were faithful to the Lord. And the sermon that's in that is that what a peaceful life God's children have when they're faithful to his word. The chaos, the struggle, the trauma comes when they step out of his word and do their thing. Donna?
Well, rest is important to God. He told us to rest on the Sabbath. He told them to rest the land.
Right.
And in the Jubilee year, you didn't grow anything.
That's right.
Because the land was supposed to have rest. And so more than one time in the
Right.
Bible, it talks about, and they had rest.
Good point.
And the land had rest. Yeah.
Good point. That, of course, that's just what it said right here in verse 11. The land had rest. So that's a good observation. You know, we can fight and work and fight and defend. We need some rest here. The rest comes when we do God's will. All right. Okay. Now we enter this new cycle here. It is the cycle that we have here on the last page of our syllabus, the second cycle of rebellion that begins with Ehud. This is really an interesting fellow here. In verse 12, the children of Israel again did evil in the sight of the Lord. So the Lord strengthened Eglon, king of Moab, against Israel, because they had done evil in the sight of God. Now, I don't think I put this on this map here. You can't see it that well. But if you have that map in your syllabus here, this one right here, you'll notice that Moab is here on the other side of the Dead Sea. This region, you probably heard, even today they use the term Transjordan, which means it is on the other side of Jordan. Here's the Jordan River right there, and here's the Jordan. Here's Transjordan. Ammon, Moab are Transjordan regions right here. And these people have an interesting history, if you read it there in the syllabus. And as Ehud comes to the situation here, Eglon, the king of Moab, will come over Jordan and he will take the city of Jericho. Now, I think I may have mentioned this before. I don't know. Many of you probably weren't here. But this whole geographical region of the Mediterranean, and particularly the region here of, which one, but again, of Israel here, and the Transjordan area, the Sea of Galilee, down to the Dead Sea, this whole region. It looks so much like Southern California. It is so similar to it. And in particular, Jericho looks just like the Coachella Valley. And many of you are familiar with that. You go to Indio. If you took an ancient city and built it right up against the foothills behind Indio, that would be Jericho. And then as the land would spread out with the date palms going down and around the corner to the Salton Sea, that's exactly what Jericho looks like. I mean, you could close your eyes for a moment, open it, and think you're back in Southern California. It is so much like that. That's why Jericho will be called the City of Palms. The reason I point this out is that the ancient city of Jericho is not all that big. You can run around it in a couple of minutes if you're a good runner. You can walk around it in 10 minutes tops. It's real simple. It's just a mound that where the walls were. The people would go out in the fields. They would plant their fields, come inside the city for defense. That's why they built these double walls. But what is outside the city in this valley that goes all the way down to the Jordan is fields full of fruit and vegetables and date palms everywhere. It looks just like Coachella Valley. And that's where Eglon, the king, built his palace, is out here in this area. They left the city of Jericho, the ancient city, alone. Once Joshua took it down, no one went back to rebuild it. It was just gone. So they're going into this, and this is where Ehud is going to be sent. Here, let's read verse 12 again. The children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord. The Lord strengthened Eglon, king of Moab, against Israel, because they had done evil in the sight of the Lord. Then he gathered to himself the people of Ammon and Amalek and went and defeated Israel. Notice over here, keep pushing that button. There's Ammon, and the Amalekites will be over here. And he's going to take all these people, and they're going to go against them right here at Jericho. This is where he's going to get all of his forces and attack them here, and that's where he had control over them. And so he gathered those people, defeated Israel, took possession of the city of palms. That's Jericho. So the children of Israel served Eglon, king of Moab, 18 years. So for 18 years, they're stuck there. And when the children of Israel cried out to the Lord raised up a deliverer for them. Ehud, the son of Gera, the Benjamite, a left-handed man. By him, the children of Israel sent tribute to Eglon, king of Moab. So Ehud is the man who has now been selected to send the tribute. That's the tax to the king. And he's a Benjamite. And what was typical of men of the tribe of Benjamin, they were left-handed. And that's why we're going to read here in a moment about the dagger that he will make and strap it to his right thigh. And the reason for that is, any of you, and I know some of you, shoot pistols, etc., cross draw is oftentimes easier, quicker. You reach across and pull your weapon rather than reach down. You can get it quick. That's what he was doing. But there's something else here, and I'm just going to throw this out to you and see if any of you have had the same experience that I have had. Growing up, I just wanted to play baseball. That's, just baseball. Play a little basketball, football in the season. And I noticed that with all my friends that I played with a bunch of them in the Phoenix area, that when a boy would show up and he was left-handed, either he just couldn't do a thing, or he was exceptionally gifted and athletic, and he could move in a way that was quicker than right-handed boy. Now, I don't know if you've ever noticed that. Professional ball players, when they're left-handed, a left-handed throw, pitch, or pass has a little more on it than a right-handed. Now, not always, and I know there's exceptions to it, but in my experience, those fellows that were left-handed were a little harder to beat. They were a little tougher. I'm going to go ahead and do this for the benefit of those half dozen of you who were here back in '75. When I got here, I started playing racquetball, and I got pretty good at it. And I started beating everybody. And this sounds so pretentious. I'm so sorry, but there's a point to it. And I was beating everybody. But there was one guy I couldn't beat, and he couldn't beat me. We would fight to a tie after beating each other up. And it was Michael Ferris. Remember Glenn and Jody? Their son Michael. Michael was an exceptional athlete, and he was left-handed. And when he and I would play racquetball, we weren't used to getting out of each other's way. We would get in the wrong lane. He would hit me in the back. I would hit him in the back. And it would get so painful that finally we just quit. We just couldn't play each other. But he was so good. And it was hard to beat him other than just take the ball and hit him with it. And then he'd do the same thing to me. And I thought, and then as I went ahead in life, I worked with some young boys that were left-handed. And they were exceptional in what they could do. Now, that doesn't have a lot to do with our text other than Ehud, I believe, falls into that category. He was a fellow who was quick, fast, gifted, athletic, left-handed. He was a little lighter on his feet. We're going to see this here in just a minute. So something about that has always intrigued me about left-handed athletes. They're always looking for left-handed hitters, pitchers, throwers, because these guys are tough. Left-handed guys play first base for reasons known to baseball people. And so it's just a unique thing about the physiology of men. And here is arguably one of the most famous left-handed men here in the Old Testament, and he's the second judge. And so Ehud comes on the scene, and he is selected by the people to take the tribute to Eglon. And if you look in your syllabus here, Eglon The definition of his name, it includes the idea of a small, rotund calf. A little fat animal. Because it turns out the Moabite people had a very rich diet, and that became a term used for all of the Moabite soldiers. They were very full-bodied, let's say. And I have mentioned this to you before. You go to the Philippines, a person who's fat is considered wealthy because he can afford to have all this food. And they say that very matter-of-factly, not with any kind of giggle or sarcasm. It's just the facts. And so these Moabites they've been living high on the hog, fat and sassy, for quite a while, and they have taken over. And the Israelites are crying out to God, and God is going to choose Ehud. Now you take the tribute to this king. He has a palace that if you go online, you can find this. Now this is the great thing about teaching in the 21st century. Go home, check what we're saying, Google Eglon, Google the Moabites, and you'll see maybe some renditions of what his palace looked like. He was on a second floor, his throne room, and they've got diagrams of what it would look like, etc. But he's up there just raking it in. That's what he's doing. So Ehud is going to go give him his tribute here. So verse 16, Ehud made himself a dagger. It was a double-edged and a cubit in length. And I think we're all aware a cubit was generally measured from the tip of the elbow to the tip of the longest finger, roughly 18 inches. But this dagger is not going to have a hilt. You know what a hilt is that little blade that keeps your hand from sliding on to the blade from the handle. It's just a long piece that has a handle at one end. And it's two-edged, sharp, and when it's homemade, they're pretty deadly. So he made this, a double-edged dagger, and he fastened it under his clothes on his right thigh. This was a quick draw. He could reach over and pull that thing. This was a cross-draw dagger. That's what I would write there. So he brought the tribute, verse 17, to Eglon, king of Moab. Now Eglon was a very fat man. All right, that's right. And when he had finished presenting the tribute, that means it wasn't just here's your check. It took a little bit to show how much that they're giving him, and for him to double check and see it. So he has to present it. And when he finished presenting the tribute, he sent away the people who had carried the tribute. All right, you guys, thanks for your help. You guys have gone. He wanted to be alone with the king. And so he said, here it is. Verse 19, pardon me. But he himself turned back from the stone images that were at Gilgal and said, wait a minute, I've got a secret message for you, O king. And he said, keep silence. And all who attended him went out from him. Now, there is some question here in verse 19, the stone images, was this area right out at the edge where there were some idols? Or was this possibly the pile of stones that Joshua had earlier commanded the people to stack when they had crossed over the Jordan River, and you remember it spread and it was dry, and they put that there for a memorial? Not sure if that's the case or not. It is suggested that maybe by then it would have all been torn down, which I think makes more sense. But whatever it was a specific place, and Ehud said, wait guys, you going, I've got to go give a message to the king here. And so he comes back, and he said, keep silence, and all who attended him went out from him. So the king is anticipating something special. Now, he has no reason to doubt or mistrust Ehud, because Ehud has just given him a boatload of tribute. They said, oh, and I've got something else. Oh, good. Maybe, oh, yeah, all right, you guys leave here. I need to talk to Ehud a little bit more here. He's going to give me something. So verse 20, Ehud came to him. He was sitting upstairs in his cool private chamber, thought to be the throne room that would be on the second floor in the corner. And what would have been built behind his throne room was basically the bathroom. They would build it. You can go online. You can see pictures of that. I decided not to put it up here, but you can get the idea, as it would have their various rooms. And then at the top at the end, they would have the throne room with steps up to it where he would receive his subjects, etc. And then right behind the throne room is his bathroom. It makes perfect sense, doesn't it? And he would want to be quiet. So they would leave him alone in his bathroom. Well, that's what's going on here. He's sitting upstairs, verse 20, in his cool private chamber. Then Ehud said, I have a message from God for you. So he arose from his seat. He got up. Oh boy, goody. Ehud reached with his left hand, took the dagger from his right thigh, and thrust it into his belly. Even the hilt, now whether that was a hilt like we have today or not, likely not, is just the handle where you could grip it. The handle went in. Notice, the hilt, verse 22, went in after the blade, and the fat closed over the blade, for he did not draw the dagger out of his belly, and his entrails came out. Now, this is a pretty grotesque, graphic moment, that the whole dagger is going in. That's 18 inches. We're going to see it will stick out the back. The whole thing is now in his body. And evidently, the hole is big enough that now his insides are coming out. And verse 23, then Ehud went out through the porch and shut the doors of the upper room behind him and locked them. And when he had gone out, Eglon's servants came to look, and to their surprise, the doors of the upper room were locked. What would that say to you if you were a servant of Eglon and his private room is locked?
Don't come in.
Yeah, don't come in, yeah. He is attending to the toiletries of the day. And they're going to just leave him alone there for a while. Brilliant, stroke of brilliance on Ehud's idea to get him up in Mizpah and then to kill him and to leave him in there and to lock it and walk out. And someone said, well, why wouldn't he take the dagger? Suppose he was able to get that dagger out of the king, that little fat king. Suppose he was able to get it out. That thing's going to be covered with, pardon me, I know it's gross, but covered with blood and entrails and all kind of, how do you hide that? You know, put that under my coat and try to walk past the guards. Well, he just leaves it in there. His hands are clean. He gets out and he just walks out very quietly, very normally. And they think, well, he and the king have had a secret little powwow. And so he walks out. I'm sure he tips his hat to him. See you later, fellas. And the king is locked inside his bathroom. And so verse 24, when they had gone out, Eglon's servants came to look. To their surprise, the doors of the upper room were locked. So they said, he is probably attending to his needs in the cool chamber. Yeah, that's what we would all assume. So they waited till they were embarrassed. And still, he had not opened the doors of the upper room. Well, he should be done by now. You know, what's going on here? Are you going? No, you go in. No, I'm not going to go in. You go in the king. Who's going to go in? The king. Therefore, they took the key and opened them, and there was their master, fallen dead on the floor. But Ehud escaped while they delayed. So while they were waiting for him to open the door, Ehud made his escape. Brilliant. Just worked out just right. Rodney?
I was Googling what we were talking about with Ehud, and he said he was an assassin. So it's like action film. It's pretty cool.
Say that again, please.
So I Googled Ehud and it stated that he was an assassin.
Yeah.
So it's like an action movie. It's pretty cool that he's doing stuff like this because if you look at it in an action way, it's part of like an action movie.
That's right. So this was not his first rodeo to take someone out like that. And by the way, when I say go home and Google, please go home and Google. But it's okay, right? That's fine. We'll pick up there Wednesday night and see how this thing ends for you. Like,
What's happening?
Oh,
Up cheap.
Yeah, aren't they great? We're out. All kinds of great Glad to be here.
Really, really enjoyed being interviewed. Get it out.
Yeah. It always hurts more, even though it's You
could do it. Okay, that hurts. Okay, that hurts. You know your fault. You're doing it. That hurts. You don't know how much it hurts.
But I'm almost there. I don't care. Give me a break. Yeah. I get it. No, we put your hand up. That's it. Hey, Ethan, you know about what it's going to be like.
Yes, thank you. Probably still.
The loss of mom, which did.
Yeah.